Locally owned, locally connected. This is 21 News Midday.
East Palestine residents continue to be afraid and anxious about their exposure to the chemicals there. They're worried about the quality of air and drinking water despite reassurances by government officials that they are safe. But some have reported lingering coughs or chest pain or things along those lines. Joining me right now is trial attorney Lin McCraw. He is a past president of the Texas Trial Lawyers Association. Mr. McCraw, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Matt.
Well, the NTSB is investigating what happened in East Palestine, but what does that mean for the residents there who are impacted?
Well, anytime the NTSB comes in and investigates, it means that you're going to get a higher degree of investigation than you might otherwise get. They oftentimes come in when you have a pattern, or they recognize a pattern of problems with a particular carrier. So they're paying a lot of attention to this derailment for sure.
As someone who has spent a long time in the courtroom in cases such as this, you know, how long do you think this stuff will be tied up in court? A lot of lawsuits filed against the companies here involved.
There have been a number of lawsuits that have been filed. Some have been class actions, some have been individual actions. They're going to all proceed at different rates, but I would anticipate it's going to take months for sure, and possibly years before the residents of East Palestine see final conclusion. But they are certainly headed in the right direction, and I have seen from the filings that I've seen that they are definitely going about it in a very quick manner. They're not delaying.
What's your advice to some of these residents in East Palestine right now to prepare for some of these court cases?
Well, the first thing I would do if I was a resident of East Palestine is I would make sure that I got very good blood testing done to see if there was dioxin in my blood, to see if there were any other contaminants in my blood. I would do that because you're going to have to prove contamination in the event something bad does happen. I always adhere to the principle that we prepare for the worst and hope for the best. That's what these residents should be doing. They ought to be doing that, and then they need to find out about their legal rights. We have a chemicalspill.info is a good checklist of resources that are available. Perhaps they go to a site like that or another to learn as much as they can about their rights.
You kind of touched upon it right there, but what kind of things should they keep as evidence that could help them in the future if these things do make it to court?
Well, anything that they have that might show contamination, they need to keep evidence of that. If they've lost pets, if they've lost animals, or if they have situations, perhaps hair loss or something along those lines, it's unusual or different for them or for the pets or for family members, they need to document that. They need to take pictures of it. They need to document it with medical professionals if they possibly can. That's going to be critically important to show the exposure and show the level of the exposure. See, part of the problem they're going to run into is you have acute symptoms, those that happen immediately, and then you could have some symptoms that could be years coming in the future. So again, we want to preserve any evidence that we have of contaminants, of them being exposed to contaminants, because we don't know long term if they're going to be sick or not. And so we've got to preserve that evidence now while it exists.
Do you think these people will ever see justice at the end of all this?
I think they will. This particular case, there's been a lot of attention that's been brought to bear, and there's been a lot of political attention also. I do expect that they will eventually get justice, but I do think it's going to be a lot longer road than a lot of people think right now. It's the nature of what they're dealing with, and the long-term nature of some of these potential injuries that are going to cause it to extend out for a period of time.
And Mr. McCraw, one last word. If you could give advice to some of the people there who are probably down, depressed, that there's such a long road ahead of them, what advice do you have for them to kind of stick with it all?
Well, my advice is always, like I said, prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Part of preparing for the worst is exploring their legal options and their legal rights. I urge them not to sign any release that any person may be bringing around. Sometimes people will try to swoop in and settle cases cheaply, and I also advise them to make sure when they hire a lawyer to look at that lawyer's qualifications, look at their firm, to make sure they're hiring the right person, the right group for their particular case.
All right, Mr. Lin McCraw, trial attorney from Texas, we appreciate all of your assistance here today. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Matt.